If you just cannot seem to stop obsessing over a partner, even though you know they're probably not very good for you, then this video is for you. When we find ourselves walking on eggshells around a lover, it's likely because they demonstrate some pretty confusing and inconsistent behaviors. For example, maybe you have a partner who doesn't appreciate you and takes your generosity for granted, shows up with fireworks one day and then disappears without explanation the next, treats you like an intimate partner but doesn't give you any physical intimacy, or they only seem to be interested in sex but exclude you from other aspects of their lives. Maybe they avoid labeling the relationship and make you feel kind of neurotic for needing that, or behave in a needlessly secretive fashion. Perhaps they ignore you for weeks and then text, "Miss you," at 2 a.m. Maybe they make it unsafe to talk directly about feelings or the nature of the relationship itself. Maybe they sleep with other people as a way to keep you in your place and or put distance between you. Or they might commit to you, but then they pull back emotionally. So you start to feel more lonely when together than when you are apart. As a result, you're left feeling confused and worrying about how you can make them happy so that you can finally feel calm and safe in the relationship. But this only leads to unhealthy people pleasing and stuffing your feelings down so as not to rock the boat. Resentments grow, but you're afraid to express your anger, so you stuff that down too and become increasingly anxious, depressed, obsessed, and clingy. Before you know it, you're searching for YouTube videos on topics like love addiction and codependency, and you wind up here in this moment with me. Now, if I'm on target with this, then you're going to want to stick around to the end of this video, because I'm going to talk about 4 distinctive neurochemicals that keep you locked in toxic cycles with inconsistent partners, and also provide you recommendations on how to break these patterns. This video is part of a series on the impact of attachment styles on the physical body. To learn more about attachment basics and the impact of attachment trauma, be sure to check out my playlist, Healing Attachment Wounds, on my YouTube channel. Additionally, if you are just joining me here for the first time, welcome. My name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract the soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions, which I call the MacWilliam method. The content on my YouTube channel is derived from my online courses, which you can learn more about through the link in the caption of this video. If you would like to learn more about your attachment style, you can take the 4-question quiz. If you like what you see and hear and you want to learn more, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put up videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Now, I tend to think of romantic love as an addiction, and this belief is bolstered by a variety of neurological research, perhaps most popularly understood and made available by the lovely Helen Fisher. But romantic love doesn't quite acquire the label of an addiction until it becomes problematic. And that is when the love relationship hits a major bump in the road, and our pain-related pathways start lighting up right alongside our pleasure-related pathways. And this leads to varying degrees of emotional and self-abandonment on the mental, emotional, physical, and even spiritual level. Interestingly, during the honeymoon phase of a relationship, the brain is actually in quite an uproar, comparable to hypomania. But eventually, our love chemicals flip a switch, and oxytocin, also known as the cuddle hormone, kicks into high gear. And that is when we begin to feel more secure and settled in our relationships. This suggests that love addiction could actually be reparative of our attachment styles and of our relationships if the relationships are reciprocal and non-toxic. But unfortunately, as we have explored in this video series thus far, while changes in communication and improvements in circumstantial situations can help some improve their sense of felt security, it does not work for everyone. Because for those that have experienced intense emotional trauma, increasing emotional availability and intimacy in a relationship can sometimes result in intensifying defensive coping mechanisms. And this can lead to increasing toxic behaviors in relationship. And so what becomes of relevance to our discussion here today is when that addiction goes awry. When we find ourselves inexplicably drawn to partners that we know are not good for us. And we get caught in push-pull power dynamics that leave us with emotional whiplash. Now, there are distinct chemicals in the brain that can overwhelm our ability to really cope with what are literal withdrawals in a breakup. Here, I would like to add a disclaimer that I am not a neuroscientist. However, I did work for 4 years at a brain research and diagnostic clinic. For as much as we know about the brain, there is still so much more that we do not know. However, what I am offering here today is a summary of research that helped me so much, both personally and professionally, when it came to my own insecure attachment style. This afforded me the ability to make increasingly conscious decisions when it came to partner selection, and it also allowed me to experience an improved quality of life. So let's take a look at 4 significant chemicals that can have an effect on your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors when it comes to love. First, let's take a look at dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that controls the pleasure center of your brain. These are the reward circuits of your brain. Intense experiences like unforgettable dates, over-the-top attention and flattery, amazing sex, gifts, traveling to exciting places, and grand romantic gestures all release dopamine in the brain. Dopamine commands the brain to do it again and again and again and again. It's also important to realize that dopamine flows more readily in the brain when there is intermittent reinforcement. We could compare this to a gambler at the slot machine who keeps waiting for their number to hit, like a lover with an inconsistent partner that shows up sometimes and sometimes doesn't. The anxiously impatient partner hangs on for when they might get their next hit. In other words, the next big show of interest and romantic attention. They know it's going to happen sometime, they just don't know when. So perhaps your partner disappears for days and then shows up with flowers and a big date planned. Or maybe they treat you like a lover, but then they withhold coveted relationship status. Maybe they're always on the precipice of commitment, but then they do something that basically presses the reset button, and suddenly you're back at the beginning of the relationship. Or maybe they're vague when talking about the future, and they leave you kind of guessing about what their true intentions might be. So you end up sitting there, waiting, praying, obsessing, pulling the lever over and over again, texting "hey" and "miss you" at 2 a.m. until finally you get a response, because then it's like getting another hit. And in that blissed out state, you don't realize the negative return on that risky investment. Dr. Helen Fisher also discovered that when individuals experience adversity in their relationships, it actually heightens their passion and romantic feelings. She calls this frustration attraction. So in order to be mindful of the impact of dopamine, you have to understand that your obsession with this partner is not because they are the best option for you, but likely because they are the worst option for you. So let's look at oxytocin. Kisses, caresses, affection, hot sex, the power of touch, it cannot be underestimated in the bonding and attachment process, as it stimulates oxytocin in the brain. Oxytocin, which is aptly named the cuddle or love hormone, is the same hormone that bonds mother and child at birth and promotes not only attachment, but also trust. Research shows us that increased levels of oxytocin in the brain actually decreases the fear mechanisms in the brain associated with avoiding things like betrayal or dishonesty. And so our ability to receive feedback that could help us make a better discerning decision in the future actually becomes disabled. Quite literally, oxytocin jams these rosy-colored glasses onto your face that encourage you to only look at the potential in your partner and overlook any deception or dishonest behavior. In essence, you tend to trust them blindly, and this gets worse if you're sexually involved with them. So let's move on to stress hormones. Now, while oxytocin nourishes the bonds of love, it may also be responsible for the gut-wrenching pain you feel when you lose your love. And this happens when it is usually released alongside stress hormones. So the unpredictability, fear, and stress surrounding an inconsistent partner can encourage you to release stress hormones. And this winds up sharpening your focus on that partner. Because in the case of a toxic roller coaster and or inconsistent relationship, your partner is both the source of comfort and threat for you. Therefore, your fears about a partner abandoning you, combined with your physical and sexual intimacy, make memories of this relationship a lot more powerful and difficult to escape. Basically, they become emblazoned on your neural networks. Interestingly, fear also releases dopamine, which, if you'll recall, stimulates your reward networks. This is probably why horror movies do so well at the box office, or why many of us can't tear our eyes away from the harrowing trials of those on reality TV. But if this continues over time, it will create a traumatic stress response, much like the one we discussed in our last video, Healing Attachment Wounds, Cliff Notes on Attachment Theory and Trauma. Your brain will release cortisol and your kidneys will release adrenaline. Then the amygdala will start laying down heightened emotional memories, while your hippocampus stops being able to tag that information properly. And if you wind up slipping into a dissociated defensive response as a result, you may lose track of your sense of self, your intuition, and even your perceptions of reality. In an attachment relationship, fear and pleasure become inextricably linked in a vicious and addictive cycle. And so this is why couples who jump out of planes or experience life-threatening events together tend to bond more closely. It's also why you may inadvertently bond with someone who has hurt you or even abused you. And this is a condition that might also be referred to as trauma bonding. Lastly, let's discuss serotonin. When we fall in love, we become obsessive. Research shows that the levels of serotonin in your brain drop when you are in love, similar to those that struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder. And serotonin can have a huge impact on your mood, energy, attention, pain, hunger, your weight, and even your sex life. In fact, low levels of serotonin have also been associated with hypersexual behavior. So in a roller coaster relationship, chemically speaking, intermittent, intense, and exciting experiences trigger a release of dopamine in your brain. And this is similar to what happens with drug addiction. This circumstance is exacerbated by periods of adversity or discord in the relationship. And the stress you feel heightens your focus and attention on the inconsistent partner because they are both a threat and a comfort to you. Furthermore, if you're sexually intimate with this person, your oxytocin is going to bond you to them while making you chemically blind to any mistreatment of you. And at the same time, your serotonin drops. So you're obsessing over them while becoming increasingly horny. Now you are in what is often called a toxic and vicious relationship cycle, which means you are quite literally being drugged over and over again. Now at this point, you're probably wondering, how can I escape such a vicious cycle of toxic relating if it's chemically stimulated by my own body? To answer this, I recommend that you conceptualize your breakup as addiction recovery. And I don't mean this metaphorically. You are quite literally going to be physically withdrawing from naturally occurring chemicals in your body that will compel you to return to your drug of choice, which in this case is a partner with whom you experience toxic patterns in love and or, most likely, attachment trauma reenactments. That means that your brain and nervous system is going to be inflamed looking for this person. You will feel pain in your body. In fact, researchers show that when you take aspirin after heartbreak, it can make you feel better. Also realize that what you are looking for in the throes of love addiction is connection. And the most fundamental connection that you are searching for is a connection to yourself. This is like food addiction. You cannot go cold turkey. But if you are to kick the habit, you also cannot eat the foods that you've been eating. You have to love and cherish yourself enough to treat yourself to something better. For example, I once had a client ask me if she could have a more secure attachment while remaining in a relationship with a toxic partner that she wasn't ready to leave yet. Unfortunately, this is like asking me, how can I live a sober life if I don't want to give up binge drinking? We need connection in order to survive and thrive. So if you're going to quit your addiction to a specific person, recognize that you need to arrange in advance for alternative sources of connection that will keep you fed. Otherwise, you will find yourself starving and banging down their door again just to survive. To learn more about this, including how to conceptualize a bad breakup through the trans theoretical model for change, I invite you to check out my video, Love Addiction and No Contact. Does it work? And if you're interested in learning more about how I help individuals love themselves and connect on a deeper level, I invite you to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Because next week, I'm going to walk you through an experiential exercise that I use with the MacWilliam method, and it's derived from my signature online course, Healing Attachment Wounds with Mindfulness and Creative Arts Interventions. Experiential exercises like this are profoundly helpful for adults struggling with love-addicted feelings who want to connect with their own essence and spirit. For example, Kim struggled with depression and anxiety and falling into roller coaster relationships. Learning about the neural mechanisms of attachment, the role of complicated grief, and performing experiential exercises like the one I'm about to show you were her favorite aspects of the program.
Realizing that it wasn't so much a flaw in my character, these were certain parts of the brain that were being stimulated. And then being able to learn how to reprogram the amygdala or the amygdala. Yes. And so that's obviously what the experiential exercises were intended for. So yeah, that's, I think, was the most important part for me. This program has done for me in 7 weeks what years of therapy and self-help books didn't do. So I've really, you know, there's been so much, like I said, head knowledge and so much of these other self-help books and therapy programs, and which has all been great. Obviously, you need to learn how to put everything in perspective and articulate and kind of organize your thoughts and your experiences. But just to take myself into a place of being able to feel it and now being able to, you know, really get over the anxiety and the depression.
If you'd like to learn more about healing attachment wounds with mindfulness and creative arts interventions, you can check out a link in the caption of this video, and it will offer you a special discount. So be sure to stay tuned for our next video in this series, and make sure you bring your art supplies. Thank you for watching.